It was just another quiet evening when the call came in. An urgent distress signal from the outskirts of the city. The voice on the other end was frantic, barely coherent. Dogs! So many of them! Covered in something glowing green. The rescue team had handled their fair share of bizarre cases, but nothing like this. Glowing parasites. It sounded impossible. Yet within minutes, they were geared up, speeding through winding roads toward an abandoned construction site where the sighting had been reported. The moment they arrived, an eerie stillness hung in the air. The place was almost silent, too silent. No barking, no rustling of leaves, just an unsettling quiet that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. Flashlights cut through the darkness as they scanned the area, their breath visible in the cool night air. Then, a faint whimper, a dog, somewhere nearby. As they moved cautiously through the debris and broken concrete, they spotted the first one, a frail, trembling dog, curled up against a rusted metal sheet. But it wasn't the dog's condition that made their stomachs tighten. It was what was on it. Tiny, pulsating green specks, clinging to its fur like living gemstones, glowing faintly in the dim light. The team froze. What were they looking at? Parasites? Some kind of chemical contamination. The dog let out another weak whimper, and that was enough to snap them back into action. One by one, more dogs emerged from the shadows. Some staggered forward, their bodies covered in the strange glowing parasites, while others lay motionless, too weak to move. It was worse than they had expected. Dozens of strays, all infested with these eerie, bioluminescent creatures. Some of the rescuers had dealt with severe tick infestations before, but this was something out of a nightmare. "All right, we need to move fast," said Jake, the team lead, his voice steady but urgent. "We don't know what these things are, but they're draining these dogs. We need to get them out of here now." Carefully, they started lifting the weakest dogs into their transport crates, ensuring they didn't disturb the glowing parasites too much. No one knew how these things would react. Could they bite? Could they spread? Every movement was cautious, every touch deliberate. The dogs, despite their condition, seemed to sense they were finally safe. Some barely had the strength to lift their heads, their eyes dull and exhausted. But they didn't resist. They were too weak to fight anymore. As the team worked, Sarah, the team's medic, noticed something chilling. One of the larger dogs, a golden retriever mix, was breathing in short, strained gasps. The parasites on its body were clustered around its neck, forming a thick, suffocating patch. Its gums were pale. It was running out of time. "Guys, this one's in serious trouble," she called out, rushing to stabilize it. "If we don't get these things off, it won't make it." But just as she reached for her emergency kit, something strange happened. The parasites twitched simultaneously. Then, as if sensing the urgency, they started to glow brighter. A pulsing rhythmic light, like a warning signal. The team exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever these things were, they were reacting. And then, from the far end of the site, a low guttural growl echoed through the air, a sound that didn't come from any of the weakened dogs they had found. The team turned, flashlights scanning. The darkness. Something was still out there, watching, waiting. The truck sped through the empty streets, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, the team sat in tense silence, the occasional whimper from the rescued dogs filling the air. Sarah kept her eyes on the golden retriever mix, her hands trembling slightly as she checked its pulse. It was still weak, but stable. For now, the glowing parasites on its body had dimmed since they had left the site. But the unsettling thought remained. What exactly were they dealing with? Mark finally broke the silence. Did anyone else see that dog disappear? Like, literally vanish? No one answered right away. It had happened so fast, and their minds were already overloaded with everything they had witnessed. But they all knew the truth. The large dog had been there one moment and gone the next, as if it had never existed. Jake tightened his grip on the wheel. Let's just focus on saving these dogs first. We'll deal with everything else later. The rescue center was ready for them when they arrived. Vets and volunteers rushed to unload the dogs, carefully placing them in quarantine areas where they could be monitored. The main concern was removing the parasites without harming the already fragile animals. No one had ever seen anything like this before, and they had to be careful. One by one, the dogs were examined. The glowing parasites were still attached to their skin, but something strange was happening. Now that they were away from the construction site, their glow had started to fade. Some had even shriveled up, falling off like dried leaves. It was as if they couldn't survive outside of that environment. Sarah and the vets worked through the night, carefully removing the parasites and treating the dogs' wounds. Every tick-like creature that fell to the ground twitched once before, going completely still, its eerie glow vanishing. Whatever these things were, they seemed to lose their power the moment they left their host. By dawn, the worst was over. The dogs were resting, some even wagging their tails weakly as they received food and water. The golden retriever mix, the one Sarah had worried about the most, lifted its head and gave her a tired but grateful look. "They are going to make it," Sarah whispered, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. But there was still one question left unanswered. What had they witnessed that night? Jake stood by the doorway, arms crossed. "I talked to a few researchers," he said. "No known species of tick or parasite glows like that." And the way they reacted, almost like they were connected to something. Sarah exhaled, and that dog, Jake, nodded. Yeah, that dog. There was no logical explanation for what had happened. They had saved the strays, but something still lingered in the back of their minds. A feeling that this wasn't over. Days passed, and the dogs grew stronger. The last of the parasites had been removed, and with no sign of infection or disease, they were on the road to recovery. Some were even ready for adoption. The worst was behind them, or so they thought. One evening, just as Sarah was leaving this center, she felt something strange. A prickle at the back of her neck. The sensation of being watched. She turned, scanning the quiet streets, but there was nothing there, just the dim glow of streetlights and the rustling of trees in the wind. Then, for just a split second, she swore she saw it. Two faint green eyes in the shadows. Watching, waiting, she blinked, and they were gone. Shaking off the unease, she got into her car, telling herself it was just exhaustion, playing tricks on her mind. After all, the rescue was over. The dogs were safe. But as she drove away, one thought remained: some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. The air grew thick with tension as the growl echoed again, low and menacing. The team exchanged nervous glances, their flashlights darting across the debris-strewn ground, searching for the source of the sound. The weakened dogs had barely been able to lift their heads, so who or what was out there? Jake tightened his grip on his flashlight, his heartbeat drumming in his ears. "Stay alert," he murmured. The last thing they needed was a confrontation with an aggressive animal in the middle of a rescue operation. But deep down, something about this growl didn't sit right. It wasn't just territorial. It was something else, something unnatural. Sarah kept her hands on the golden retriever mix, her fingers feeling the weak rise and fall of its chest. "We don't have time for this," she whispered, her voice urgent. "If we don't move now, these dogs won't make it." Before anyone could respond, a shadow shifted in the far corner of the site. The light from their flashlights flickered across the figure of a dog, larger than the others, its fur matted and streaked with grime. But it wasn't the dog itself that sent a shiver down their spines. It was the way its eyes gleamed unnaturally, in the dark, reflecting an eerie green hue, almost identical to the parasites clinging to the others. Then it stepped forward, and they saw the truth. Its entire body was covered in the glowing parasites. But unlike the other dogs, this one wasn't weak. It was alert, watching. The team instinctively took a step back. The dog's growl deepened, its lips curling just slightly. It wasn't attacking, not yet, but it also wasn't acting like the rest. It was almost protecting something. Jake's mind raced. Could this be the source? He muttered under his breath. Maybe the first one infected. The pieces were starting to fit together. The other dogs had been too weak to move, their bodies drained by the parasites. But this one, it had adapted. It was surviving, maybe even thriving. A sudden yelp snapped their attention back to the group of rescued dogs. One of them, a small, white mutt, was trembling violently. The parasites on its fur had started to glow brighter, pulsating in an eerie rhythm. "Something's wrong," Sarah gasped. She grabbed her medical kit, her hands moving fast. But the moment she tried to touch the dog, it let out a sharp, pained cry. The parasites flared with light, and for a brief moment, the air crackled. With an almost electric energy, the team stepped back in shock. "What the hell is happening?" Mark, one of the junior rescuers, whispered. No one had an answer, but it was clear. These weren't normal parasites, and whatever they were doing to the dogs, it was escalating. They had to get out of there, fast. Jake made the call. "Load them up now." The team moved with urgency, lifting the rescued dogs carefully but quickly into their transport crates. Every second felt like a battle against an unseen force. Their nerves stretched thin. The large dog, still standing, still watching, didn't move to attack, but it didn't retreat either. It simply observed, its glowing green eyes tracking every movement. As Sarah carried the golden retriever toward the truck, she felt it stir slightly against her arms. Its breathing was shallow, but there was still life in its eyes. It wanted to survive. They all did. The last dog was secured. Jake climbed into the driver's seat, his knuckles wide against the steering wheel. "Let's go!" The truck roared to life, tires crunching over gravel as they pulled away from the eerie sight. But just before they disappeared into the night, Sarah dared one last glance out the window. The large dog still stood there, its glowing eyes locked onto theirs. And then, just as they turned the corner, it did something that sent chills down her spine. It disappeared into the shadows, not ran, not walked, just vanished. The rescue was over, but the real mystery was just beginning.